Okay, greetings to everyone. Good afternoon for those of you in Eastern Africa and also, I believe, Central Africa. Good morning to those of you in West Africa and Ghana and the GMT time zones. So welcome to our session on helping your community through voluntary action. And basically, this session is about creating positive change that needs to start with us, one person at a time. However, bureaucracies and centralization has been stopping the progress in its tracks. So we want the governments to shift power to communities, which is the best way to help spread liberty in Africa. Reason is because communities understand their local situations, they know what to do, they know and they understand their people. And it's already changing the lives of people all over the continent, thanks to the good work that all of you are doing with your organizations. So you are going to hear from great speakers today as they tell you about what they have done in their capacities, in their organizations, and then we'll also just speak about issues of what is happening around Africa. So I'm going to invite our first speaker today, who is John Mustapha Kutiyote, who is the Executive Director and Founder of Students' Organization for Liberty and Entrepreneurship, SOL, which is based in South Sudan. And he has also worked with Students for Liberty as a local coordinator, Foundation of Economic Education, and Bastia Society. John has also been an award winner at last year's Africa Shark Tank Think Tank Award at the African Liberty Forum in Nairobi, Kenya, thanks to his amazing pitching idea of entrepreneurial program for South Sudanese women to own property in Southern Africa. Please help me welcome John Mustapha to give us a brief talk about his organization.
It looks like John Mustapha might be having some technical issues. Linda, maybe we can have Joyce go ahead and start us off, and John can come in a little bit later on.
Okay, awesome. As we wait for John to connect back to us, I will introduce Joyce Mbogo, who is a young professional, a liberty enthusiast, and a liberty expert based in Nairobi, Kenya. She is the president and co-founder of the Ladies of Liberty Alliance, the Kenya social chapter. She's also a regional coordinator with us at Students for Liberty, and currently holds a Bachelor of Degree in History and International Relations from Egerton University. Joyce, welcome to, and please speak to us.
Thank you so much, Linda. Hello, everyone. I hope we are all doing well. Wherever you are, part of Africa, every part of the world that you are, thank you so much for attending this session. It's an amazing opportunity to connect. That hurts me so much, but either way, we're still gonna do what we do best. And I take this opportunity to welcome you to this session. As you've heard, my name is Joyce Mbogo. I'm from Kenya. I am the president and co-founder of Ladies of Liberty Alliance Kenya. And today we're gonna talk about how do we help our communities through voluntary action during these hard times where the world is facing a pandemic. We found ourselves in this situation. And just to recap, so many things are happening currently, especially in Africa. The COVID-19 situation, it is as bad in Africa as it is anywhere else in the world. Can everyone hear me? Just to confirm. Linda, is my audio okay?
Yes, we can hear you and your audio is great. Please proceed.
Okay, fine. So to start off, I'd love to share a recap of the COVID-19 situation in Kenya. As of yesterday, our numbers were at 4,044. Our recoveries are at 1,363. Our deaths are at 107. And so far, we have tested over 100,000 samples. So the situation is not as, I can say it's manageable at the moment. And since we reported the first case in March 14th or 13th, I'm not yet sure, the government has been able to put up containment measures and prevention measures. Like some businesses, as of now, they are closed. Cessation of movement in Nairobi, whereby there's no movement of people in and out of Nairobi. And mind you, Nairobi is a very important economic hub in Kenya. And schools have been closed, stay-at-home orders. Some businesses again have been closed, and wearing mask directives, just to mention a few. Those are the current measures that the government has undertaken so as to at least prevent and curb the COVID-19 pandemic. And since we reported the first case, we've had a very huge impact on people's lives, on economic, politics, social, health, uh, access to justice. So in terms of economics, again, due to closed borders now, limited mobility, so many businesses have been able to shut down. So many people have been laid off. Many people are unemployed at the moment, and so many businesses are struggling at the moment. And when it comes to health, uh, our local healthcare system is really overwhelmed. And some people are saying, if we're gonna hit the curve, if you're gonna hit the peak anytime soon, I don't know if you're going to manage um, the I don't know if our healthcare systems are going to be able to manage the outbreak whenever we hit the peak. Socially, we've had increased cases of gender-based violence, really. And if you're a Kenyan, you've read it in news, you've heard it everywhere. Increase in rape cases. You've seen previous reports about increased cases of teen pregnancies, rape cases. Uh, Generally, I'd say our mental health state as Kenyans is really, really worsening. And funny thing, this is what the government is actually ignoring, and not only in Africa, like all over the world. Governments are putting up funds uh, to for economic recovery, for healthcare for healthcare system boosting, but not really putting enough funds when it comes to mental health management. It's a situation that I feel has been ignored. And also another impact has been when accessing justice. At the moment, accessing justice uh, is a challenge. Hearing and determination of cases is being delayed, especially in Kenya. As I say, there's cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, and a lot of court determination. Our high court is in Nairobi, and so a lot of cases have been put pending. So again, that's again another impact. In terms of education, there has been a really massive disruption of the education calendar in Kenya. Schools are closed, and the government was trying to shift or trying to make teachers and education stakeholders move to the online platform, but COVID-19 has exposed the gaps that we have in the education system. It is so hard. It is so hard for us to have education platform working, online education platform working. So at the moment, schools are closed, but there's projection that we might go back to normal maybe in September. We are yet to see. So that is just a brief situation of how COVID-19 situation is like in Kenya. And I believe it is the same in any other African country. We are experiencing the same impact. And at the moment, I can't really tell, or I can't give the government a score on how it is managing the pandemic. So many things are unclear, so many double standard issues. Yes. So the topic is helping your community through voluntary action. And one I'd love to say one positive thing that COVID-19 has really put forward is the world is now appreciating and recognizing the importance of the liberty that we in the libertarian movement keep on championing for. People now have an idea of what it would look like if government suppresses our liberties or uh, government control is expanded. And I'd say this pandemic has created an opportunity for the liberty movement, especially in Africa, for us to connect and be able to show our communities the importance of open borders, the importance of economic freedom. Because at the moment, like in Kenya, the government now is determining what business should open, how many hours you should work, how people should sit in your business. I mean, it's crazy. But again, we understand we are in a situation where we have to take precautionary measures. But again, this is now the time to show people. When we talk about economic freedom, this is what we talk about. When we talk about open borders, this is what we talk about. At the moment, in Kenya, places of worship are still closed. We have some other leaders we have some, what do we call them? Religious leaders who are appealing to government to at least allow places of worship to open. Again, this is what we champion for. Again, we champion for freedom of worship, freedom of speech, freedom of movement. So we in the liberty movement in Africa, this is the time to take uh, the mantra and at least connect and educate our community on why we champion for liberties as we do. And how do we do this? So I know there's limited movement, mobility is limited now, but that does not mean that we cannot do anything, even when we are confined at home. The good thing is now we are at home, we are now engaging more within the community. For those of us who are working at home, at least now you're spending time with your neighbors, spending time with your families, spending time with your community leaders. And there are so many ways that you can enforce change during this time of COVID-19. Again, when you shift change within the community, you eliminate a lot of bureaucracies and a lot of process. And again, you initiate that one-on-one connection, the physical interaction, and it becomes easier for us to advocate for these ideas. So there are several ways where we as the people in Africa in the liberty movement, where we in the liberty movement in Africa can be able to advocate for change during this COVID-19 period. One, I'd say is establish and organize local projects. I mean, as I said, mobility is limited right now. So just organize anything simple. You could, but again, as I said, we have the social distancing directives, but we can still uphold the social distancing directives and be able to organize some local projects. Could be a drive, just what do we call it? Like in Kenya, we have Nyumba Kumi. I'm sure most of us in Kenya, we don't know even personally. I was not even aware of where my Nyumba Kumi, where I was not sure where I was. But at the moment, because now I'm spending more time with my neighbors, I've been able to now know who my Nyumba Kumi are. And okay, Nyumba Kumi means 10 houses. It was an initiative by the Kenyan government to there was a time where we had a lot of terrorist attacks. So the government introduced an initiative called Nyumba Kumi, whereby neighbors are able to know each other. 10 neighbors, that is what I'd say. So
yeah, I agree with you, Joyce, about that Nyumba Kumi as one of the positive impacts of COVID-19. Makes a lot of sense. And as Joyce said, Nyumba Kumi literally means 10 houses. And it's a program in Kenya and also in Tanzania. And it's just basically for people living in communities to be able to know each other's identities, and governments used to tap on this to get information from people. So I would like to go to our next speaker, John Mustapha, who is the founder and executive director of SOUL, which is Students' Organization for Liberty and Entrepreneurship. This is a think tank that is based in South Sudan. And John is also an alumni with us at Students for Liberty. He has worked with Foundation of Economic Education and also the Bastard Society. Last year at the African ALF held in Nairobi, Kenya, John Mustapha won the think tank Shark Tank Award for pitching an entrepreneurial idea on the right of South Sudanese women to own property in South Sudan. Please help me welcome John Mustapha.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda, for the introduction, and I'm sorry that we are able to make it to this Africa Liberty Forum. We have challenges of the COVID-19, and that we are here. And just to begin with, the COVID-19 is that country to be coronavirus, and since then up to now, the numbers of cases are on. And when it started, Sudan, what was the government rules all the businesses and things were done for.
Mustapha, I think we've lost you. Your internet is breaking. As we try and fix that, I'm gonna call in our next speaker for the day, John Mugabi, who is the founder of Action for Liberty and Economic Development Uganda. So this is a think tank that is based in Uganda. He's a graduate of economics from the Mbogo University in Kampala, and he is a graduate of the Atlas Leadership Academy. John is also an alumni of African Students for Liberty, where he was a leader with us. Please, John, come on and give us your presentation. John, we can't hear you. I think you'll have to set up your voice.
John, while you're getting your audio set up, because we still can't hear you, Linda, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what's going on in Kenya and you know, what Students for Liberty is doing right now.
Yeah, sure. So as Joyce had said, this situation is pretty interesting. And for us in Kenya, the coronavirus pandemic began with the government meeting the people with a lot of violence. Violence was used to get people to adhere to the set COVID-19 measures. So the first day the curfew was announced, police beat up people so bad that people ended up dying from the wounds. There was a child who was shot by a stray bullet standing outside his balcony. You know, there were some women who were leaving work at night. There's a woman who was, I believe, pregnant, had a miscarriage. That was just the Kenyan scene. We also saw a lot of violence in Uganda. We saw a lot of violence in Zimbabwe, in South Africa. And some people usually like to say that, oh, our people are stubborn and they don't listen until you exert some force, which I highly disagree with. So another aspect is African societies heavily depend on agriculture. When our governments imposed the COVID-19 measures that they borrowed from other economies, they didn't really put our unique situations in place. That a good number of our people depend on social interaction kind of jobs for them to make an income. And how are they going to be affected with the kind of lockdown and the curfews that they placed in? Schools were closed down. They didn't really factor how do we engage our children when they're home with still going on with learning. So there was no plan afterwards. And another thing, other than the economy, it's also something that we are rarely thinking about is domestic violence. There's been a great spike in issues of domestic violence, issues of sexual offenses right now, and mental health issues have come up. And unfortunately, there's so much attention being given to the pandemic that these things are being forgotten. People have lost their sources of income and they're depressed and they're at home. Children are at home. So many people are living with their offenders and they have nowhere to run to. The organizations that would have given them support are closed. And you can imagine how difficult this situation is. We also have diseases that are killer in Africa, like malaria. If you look at the statistics of some of the top diseases that kill African people is malaria, you will find cholera, you will find obviously HIV, you will find cancer and diabetes and all of those diseases. So much attention has gone into, identifying the coronavirus cases and treating them without having a plan of managing the other cases that are still there and that are happening.
Hello, Linda.
Yes?
Linda, are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think it was on the laptop on the browser.
Okay.
But now I'm using my phone.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm Mugabi John Socrates, the Executive Director of the Executive Director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development. I'm so grateful to share, first of all, the experience and what, as our think tank, we've been doing as far as this COVID and the government mismanagement of the lives and also the crisis is concerned. First of all, I would like to bring to you to this attention that when COVID-19 hit Uganda, the government immediately took over the crisis and formed a task force, and it gave the full authority of this task force. They gave the task force the authority to be the sole provider or the sole helper of anyone who needs food. And immediately they declared anyone who will give food as someone who will be attempting to murder. So they called it attempted murder. And they also arrested some people. But after 2 weeks, they realized that people were starving and some families even committed suicide. But still the government was not able to allow people to give people food or help because there were individual and even the private sector or the private individuals and other organizations which wanted to give food. It did not stop there, but it also went on for the sick people to access hospitals. You had to seek for the permission from the representative of the president to the district representative of the president. And it was very hard to get this permit. It was very hard to get this permit, and even it involved the issues of corruption. Some people had to pay over $200 to access this permit. And what we realized is people dying. Pregnant people were not able to reach their maternity wards or the hospital. And later we found out that many people were dying. And as Liberty, or as Libertarian and Action for Liberty and Economic Development, we later said we can do something to avoid this situation, and since we are pro-life. So we started mobilizing members, the Libertarian, most so those who were alumni of Students for Liberty and others who believe in life or the pro-life. And we started getting and fundraising for food. And we raised over $2,000 US, which served, imagine, you should get this, It served over 500 people, 586 people. But the government went on also to pass and even get a loan of over 500 million US dollar to feed two districts which has only around 6 million. The population is 6 million, and that is Kampala and Wakiso. But even with that amount of money, the government was not able to even feed 500 people. What happened last, it was seeing corruption in the offices, task force team, and even to the extent of getting arrested. But also the supply chain, what we realized was cutting off the supply chain, because the government could not allow, with its guideline, it could not allow people from borders to cross. It could take time to allow you, and even they could only accept the driver. And this one jeopardized the system and the chain of goods to move from one place to another. And the prices started hiking. But what was also interesting, when the prices went high, the government wanted to bring a control, to control prices and to prohibit anyone who raises the taxes. As our institution, Action for Liberty and Economic Development, what we decided is to tell the government that when you prohibit the freedom in the market and you try to control prices, what you're going to realize, it is inflation and then also scarcity. The next week it was scarcity, people could not access food, bread, and other things in the shop, until when time came and the government understood and it left the market free and prices became low after leaving the people to be able to sell at any price they feel they want. So competition helped and the prices of goods and services went low, and it helped the people who were at home suffering. As also Action for Liberty and Economic Development, with the help of Students for Liberty, we realized that people needed sanitizer, but this sanitizer was so expensive and it was mostly not reaching the rural areas. And we had some friends of ours who were alumni of Students for Liberty. They had gone to their village to stay there. So we started devising means and even reaching entrepreneurs to provide raw material which can be used to make this soap or the sanitizers. And for example, we have Orache Francis in his far district of Kaberamaido mobilized the community and started teaching them how to make the liquid soap. And later this liquid soap could help in sanitizing, wash, handing, and so forth. But also, Orache, what was interesting that these people later, they started buying this soap. They created business out of this kind of voluntarism because this liquid soap became cheaper and people could afford it, and then it could help the Orache Francis to produce more, as well as enjoying the benefits of being an entrepreneur. Then the last thing also we looked at, it was the masks. We got a challenge of the mask because the government said everyone should have a mask if you want to travel, if you want to move. But people started innovating. As you know, human being and the human spirit is always innovative. They started looking for cheaper ways and affordable ways of getting masks. And we advised some of the entrepreneurial women we work with, they started making masks. But when the government realized that people were able to access the mask, it monopolized and it gave an order that the only mask we could accept, these are masks made by NITIL, the National Textile Industry, which partnered with the government. And they said we are going to produce over 46 million masks. But guess what? Even up to now, with all the money which has been put at the disposal of the government and this textile industry, the masks have not yet reached the people. They have not yet produced this mask. But the voluntary action, the market voluntarism has helped that at least in every community, there is a lady who can sue these tailors, who can make masks and give it at a lower cost or affordable cost to the people who need it. And that one has been something which we've been encouraging because we realized that the government could not help except making the situation worse. I would also talk about the civil liberties which were abused in this time and which is still abused. The government passed the curfew policy where people could be, you could be at your home not beyond 7. So some people were arrested because the force or the police could arrest you before even 7 so that it can get some money from you. So they started arresting quite a number of people, even when it was not at 7 or beyond that, but just for the sake of this force wanting money. So Action for Liberty and Economic Development rose up, and we got some pro bono services from our friends, lawyers, and we intervened. There are some of the people who were arrested wrongly. So we got the lawyers and assembled them, and we went to the police, and we sought for the police bond. I think those who have been following me, you've been seeing it. So we made also a voice, and we shouted out for the civil liberties not to be taken for granted because of this crisis. So all that also went. But as I'm concluding this, I would like to point out on this, on the central planning. If there is anything which the Ugandans have learned in this COVID, is the experience of what central planning can do. When the government asked for a lot of money, over 100 million US dollars, and even having an access to the loan, they thought money would solve. They also assembled the experts, the doctors known all over in Uganda, and they formed a team, and they said this is a super team which is going to reach every corner and help. But guess what? With all the money, the government could not even move and help beyond the capital city or beyond where the task force is. And
yes,
it was proven.
very well, and thank you so much for everything that Aled has been able to do. And we do feel and share the same sentiments with what is happening in Uganda. Now I'd like to go to our next speaker, John Mustapha, to go through his experience in South Sudan. John Mustapha, if you can hear us, please, would love to hear your presentation.
Linda, I think let's go ahead and go to some of the questions that we were going to talk about. I'm working with John Mustapha to get his internet back up, but until then, we can do some of the questions.
Okay, awesome. I will ask a question to Joyce, and it's also related to one question one of the participants has asked, Adam. And this question regards the spike in domestic violence cases, child abuse, the rape cases, and mental health issues that have come up. Now, the lockdowns and the curfews have led to closures of businesses, schools, and little or no social interaction between people. And with most people being at home and all the depression going around, we've seen high number of domestic violence, sexual abuse cases, and unfortunately, these are not being given the attention that they deserve. Police stations are currently overwhelmed with managing COVID-19 and policing people, and the organizations that give this kind of support to survivors aren't available. Joyce, is this something that we are experiencing on your end? And is there anything that Lola is offering right now in related to these issues? Please let us know.
Thank you so much, Linda, for the question. I concur with you and Adam. Yeah, I see Adam ask the question. It is very, very unfortunate seeing what is happening in the country right now. We've read in the news, like in only one county, in 1 month, the Machakos County reported 4,000 cases of teen pregnancies. And again, as we have witnessed of what is being portrayed in the media, in the news, we've seen increase in gender violence, gender-based violence cases, suicide cases, murder cases. I mean, it's crazy. And again, it's so unfortunate that the government is focusing so much on the pandemic and not really paying attention to what is going on at homes. as I said, now people are confined at home. People are more engaging in the community space. And what I believe there's so much we can do. And as Lola Kenya, during this pandemic, what we have been focusing on so much is the mental health issues. And we also have an upcoming webinar on the same. But all these issues draw down to our mental health state. People are depressed, are anxious, people are lonely, they don't have people to talk to, people don't have social activities to do. And so these cases are increasing due to the issue of mental health. And until the government and non-profits as individuals, we are able to tackle this issue head on, I believe we're going to have a problem after the pandemic. We're going to beat the pandemic, but again, at the end of pandemic, we're going to be left with another huge messed up issue to deal with. What we can do, this is where we come in. We as individuals, we have the platform. We in the community, let's tell the people to normalize speaking out, seeking for help. See, especially for young women, it is so, when women are going through like the rape issue, I'm sure you have seen the debate, and it's crazy, the division, the mentality people have when it comes to rape. It's crazy. We need to take this information to the community. Let's normalize speaking out. Let people have the platform. Let's tell the government should provide platforms for people to be able to come forward whenever they have these issues. I mean, of all the governments in the world that have been tackling this issue of mental health, I believe Australia is really doing well, and the Australian government is really supporting non-profit organizations which are helping community fight these issues. So if we as the community, if we as non-profits, if we as individuals in the liberty movement can be able to go in the community and use our platforms to hold the government accountable and tell the government to also channel funds, to also channel resources in fighting gender-based violence, in fighting mental health issues, in fighting teen pregnancies, in fighting rape cases, I believe we're gonna deal with this. But the main issue is taking the information there. Talk to your neighbors. Tell them it is okay to talk out. Lead them to organizations, to individuals that deal with these issues. Because as at now, people are not coming out. As at now, people are afraid. And as a woman, that is why we as Lola Kenya, we are really focusing on mental health. We want to tell young women it is okay to come out, speak up about the issues. Use your social media platforms. Record these things, share them online. And I believe in Kenya, we have seen the benefit of using the online platform. Share the stories online, tag the responsible organization, the responsible individuals, let the story spread out there. Let's not keep quiet. The pandemic will not hold us back.
Thank you for your presentation. And I'd like to take the conversation back to John Mugabi. And you had mentioned earlier about barriers that the government has implemented in the measures that they have brought up to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we have noticed, even on our end here in Kenya, barriers to trade that have been implemented. And what do I mean? Uganda being a landlocked country means most of the export produce comes either from the port in Mombasa here in Kenya or the port in Dar es Salaam from Tanzania. Now, there's been an interesting blockage of truck drivers at the Malaba border with between Kenya and Uganda, and soldiers are turning the drivers away despite them having certificates of COVID, that they are COVID-19 free. Could you please tell us more about such barriers and other barriers that the government has brought in managing the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda. Linda, it's very interesting, the issue of the border of Uganda and Kenya, that many truck drivers have been permitted through getting certificate from your border, the Kenyan border, but when they are entering Uganda, they are being told something different. And according to the test, they say you are positive, yet they have the same certificate saying that you were negative when they were crossing from Kenya. And as the government has been so much putting all the guidelines, putting stringent measures because of the border, what is happening from Kenyan border. But we have also realized from some of the drivers who have been put in the hospitals in Uganda, they give calls to the radio. We have 2 of them who gave calls to the radio and they said, we're okay. We are just here on Wi-Fi, we're enjoying internet, and we don't know whether we are sick. There is nothing they are doing. There is no treatment. But also the government has not been so much concerned about the problem crossing the border of Kenya and Uganda, or putting it hard for the people and the goods to cross. And what have we seen? We have seen the government, if you've been following what has happened in Uganda, recently the government raised taxes on fuel. The tax on fuel was raised, giving an explanation that it is now hard to get fuel from Kenya to cross to Uganda because these trucks can no longer transport fuel to Uganda petrol station. So this was also a justification for government to put that tax. And later people are discovering that it may be, I will not say it is a hoax, coronavirus or COVID is a hoax, but we are seeing that the government or the bureaucrats are taking it to their advantage. They are trying to make passing a lot of budget requirements and even putting taxes on some goods which have been crossing from Kenya. So it's a problem to Uganda. We are suffering. This is a time we would expect the fuel to be as low as possible because it is cheaper. According to OPEC, the prices was even put down. But in Uganda, they are putting taxes and fuel is rising because goods cannot cross the border to come to Uganda. And also, we've been questioning our government when it comes to COVID and the border relation, because in Kenya, we are cooperating. Kenya was cooperative with Uganda and saying, yeah, we can do everything to see that there is no COVID positive victim who will enter Uganda. But still, even if Kenya gives the details and the results, whether it's negative or positive, when it reaches Uganda, it's something different. But also this one to Uganda, you know, they over-exaggerated the price of the test kits, the kits used to test for COVID. The government first said it is $65, but when we found out the kit was $22 and there was one for $16. And the government was using the kits from UVR, Uganda Virus Research Institute, which were donated by organization, by CDC, Center for Disease Control. But still the government was passing a big budget saying there are a lot of truck drivers at the border of Kenya whom we need to test. But then in actual sense, it was plundering, stealing money through over-exaggerating the cost of tests. So COVID-19 in Uganda is still a profitable venture, Linda, and we are trying as much as we can to bring this to the attention of the people so that people can see what the bureaucrats and the government are doing in over-exploiting and also getting a lot of money from the coffers of the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your detailed explanation, Mugabi. And I would like to touch on some of the questions the participants have asked. And one is related to something that we're all feeling. Most of the measures of managing the pandemic right now have been centralized by our governments. And I know we all relate with when the pandemic began around March. In many African countries, donations of food were restricted and governments did not allow individuals to donate food. And this was only left to the governments. Meanwhile, people were suffering and, you know, with businesses closed, no money and everything happening. So this has been a very difficult situation. And one of our attendees is asking, with what is most effective role an individual can play as economies reopen? How can you support businesses and women as they struggle during this pandemic, considering that people have lost so much money, during the months that we were on lockdown, some businesses have shut down. So how do we support them? And what kind of libertarian approach can we take in assisting the people in our societies and also these businesses? I'll go with Joyce first and then get to you, Mugabi.
Thank you so much, Linda. To answer on what we as an individual can do during this time and when the economy reopen, again, I'll mention again, we are now in the community. We are spending a lot of time within our community. How about we look for and exploit local opportunities? I can tell you a story of one person that I know who is helping her community and also earning money at the same time. Her job coming to an end during the pandemic. So right now, as I said, we don't have like mobility of movement is minimum. It is being watched or it's being, there's no freedom of movement as it used to be. So what she did, now people are supposed to be working home and the internet can be expensive and not many people can be able to afford internet. So what she did, you see in estates, there are open spaces. Some are green pages, some are just open spaces. So she set up like an online hotspot area whereby those people who are working home are using the hotspot area and she is charging them friendly rates. And at the same time, these people are able to work home. These people are able to be active online, create content online. So again, this person has taken the opportunity or has used this opportunity to explore an entrepreneurship approach, at the same time making money for herself and enabling people within the community to make money, and also enabling, like, she has also like come up with projects, like now she's trying to transform the open spaces and make sure people can use these spaces to work out, to meditate, to connect within the community, and a lot of these things. So that is one way. That is what I'm saying. We should find these opportunities within the community. We should find the gaps within the communities and exploit them. Secondly, when the economy reopen, again, this is the time we support our local businesses. This is the time we try to support the person who sells veggies out there, this person who makes local soap, this person who cooks meals within the roadside. This is the time we support them. And we can also be able to give maybe entrepreneurial advice, business advice, etc. Also, with limited movement and cessation of movement within in and out of Nairobi, supply of goods is high, but the demand is high, but supply, again, there has an interaction. So again, you can be able like to produce whatever you can and sell within your community. Again, you're feeding your community, you are taking part in the food security angle, making an impact within your community. So there's so much we can do within our community as long as we sit back, study your community, and see the gaps and be able to channel whatever you can channel.
Thank you very much for your insightful feedback on that. And it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to get John Mustapha to share with us due to internet challenges that he's facing down at home. And one thing that is happening in South Sudan that we all don't know is that South Sudan was among the last countries to confirm COVID-19 cases. And the government reacted similar to all other countries, where there was a serious lockdown and following closures of businesses and schools. People protested because of the loss of income and all of this, and the government listened and opened up the country. Now, something interesting happened. People have been allowed to interact and move in Uganda, in South Sudan. However, there's a condition that you must get a COVID-19 certificate. So that is where the catch is. This has become a business now where people are being severely oppressed. It may take you 2 or 3 months to get this certificate. Your results may be delayed. You may have to bribe if you need to travel. So the situation is really difficult. Another interesting issue is that supply chains have been broken around Eastern Africa, especially. I've mentioned prior, between Kenya and Uganda, and also similar to the way Uganda depends on Kenya for the access of the port, South Sudan depends on Uganda for a lot of their food and also some services there. Maybe John Mugabi can give us more about the things that we can do as individuals and organizations during this difficult period.
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda. First of all, we are sorry that we couldn't access Mustapha, but we have very many South Sudan people in Uganda, and they've been telling us some of the stories they get from their people. There is a lot of suffering in South Sudan. Even the war, there's some faction which have gone back to the bush to start fighting. But also they have not been very careful because the government was just coming in, the unitary government, and they didn't get time to appreciate that the country may get this crisis, may get into the crisis of COVID. So they had no system on the ground, they had no preventive measures and a quick response. So they were hit by COVID-19 and they couldn't even test because the whole country had, I think, the message I get from some of them, Mustapha would say this better, they had less than 100 testing kits, and they also ICU units, they had only 3 ICU units. So when Salva Kiir is the Salva Kiir vice president, Riek Machar got the COVID-19, he was using one of the ICU and then the 2 remaining for entire country. So South Sudan is not doing well. It's one country where as a libertarian we have to think and see how and where we can help. But also as the libertarians and our think tanks in the region, we have to so much bring it to the attention of the people using different stakeholders, the private sector, how life is becoming hard for not only the South Sudan, but also our traders in Uganda. They are losing a lot of money. Their capital is almost gone. It is destroyed because when they reach the border, both governments makes it hard for the goods to cross and people. And who suffers at the end of the day? We are seeing the business people in Uganda, their business are almost gone. And then we are also seeing the consumers in South Sudan. They are also suffering. They are starving. They cannot access this good. And I think we need to hype our voices as far as free trade and breaking the barriers, most so at the borders are concerned, this COVID, and also engage, because there has been a communication breakdown between South Sudan and the rest of the region, because no one knows exactly, because there's no internet, there is no TV or television we can get, and it's hard to know what's happening there. But when you get from one-on-one, you hear that people are suffering because they have money, but they have nowhere to buy these goods and services. Because 80% of the food which goes to South Sudan is from Uganda. We feed South Sudan, but then we cannot also take it because of the challenges we have put by the government and also the challenges in South Sudan government. So I believe, Linda, that our struggle for free trade through breaking the barriers at the border and also accessing the permit should be amplified in the region. But also I would wish we could be able to coordinate. I don't know, internet, we wanted to organize, we had an event where we had invited Mustapha to speak on Zoom, but he could not speak like what is happening today. He could not speak because the internet and also accessing other communication channels were very, very unstable. It was not possible. But I would say, Linda, we have to make sure that we build a strong movement which will have a voice which can be respected by our respective governments. Our government, more so in Uganda, Burundi, and others, they have not given attention to what free trade is, to what open borders can do and how people are suffering. And I think this is a great opportunity. Though COVID is in a disguise, COVID has come, but it has also shown us that always people need to move, because where we see in the communities where we are seeing that people are not starving, they are not asking for food, these are communities where people are able to go to the markets and do their business, and others are able to access also the market. So the mobility of people within a certain area, the freedom to move, must be something we need to teach and also to bring to attention as libertarians in East Africa and by our think tanks. So that's what I can say.
Thank you very much for your detailed explanation, Mugabi, on what we can do as libertarians and also in our capacities as individuals and organizations. A study by UNICEF has indicated that with the closures of schools in South Sudan, a number of girls right now are falling pregnant. And just yesterday on our news channels here in Kenya, one county called Machakos County recorded 3,900 pregnancies from children between the ages of 10 and 18. And these are people between the primary level to high school level. So with the school closures right now, we are having a very serious challenge. And for us in Kenya, that is just 1 out of 47 counties. If we did a national study, I think we would be very shocked by the high numbers. And, we know that most of these cases are happening because of, defilement and sexual offenses. And unfortunately, little or nothing is being done. And it's a big, big challenge for us. So I urge everyone in your organizations, all individuals right now, to think of ways we can give positive support to our communities right now during the coronavirus pandemic. Another thing that this pandemic has made us to realize is how not connected we are with each other in Africa. And the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is the project of the African Union, seeks to create a common market where we have interregional trade with each other. And I hope now we know how it feels like. For us in Kenya, we are lacking our vegetables that come from Uganda and Tanzania. For people in South Sudan, they're lacking their goods from Uganda. From Ugandans, they're lacking their goods coming from Kenya. We are all interconnected, but unfortunately, we have too many barriers into trade. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to us through this session. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and see you at the next session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you,